video, I want to talk about the vertex form. So we talked about the standard form, the factored form, and now we want to talk about the vertex form. And guys, associated with vertex form are especially three quantities: the vertex, the maximum or minimum, depending on whether the graph opens up or opens down, and the other thing is called the axis of symmetry. Okay, so let us look at the vertex form. The vertex form looks like this: f of x equals to a x minus h whole square plus k. Okay, now we have to try and see what does the h mean, what does the k mean, and what does this whole vertex form actually mean. So in order to understand the vertex form, guys, I'm going to actually draw the graphs of two different quadratic functions, and from there we will define all the key things associated with the vertex form. So let's say we have a graph which opens up, looks like this. So if it opens up, there's things that we have to keep in mind. Number one is, whenever the quantity a is greater than 0, that implies the graph of a quadratic function, it opens up. Okay. Similarly, here we are going to see, like, when the value for a is less than 0, which means it's negative, then we already know that the graph is going to open down. Okay, so if the graph opens up, then obviously these 2 points we already know. These 2 points, the x-intercepts are the solutions. This is like, let's call this x1, let's call this x2. We already know that, so I'm not going to go back into all that details. Now this point right here, guys, is called the vertex. Okay, this is the vertex. Now what is special about the vertex? One, it is if the graph opens up, then it is the lowest point of the graph. The other definition for the vertex is that it is the point where the graph changes its nature, which means if you look at the graph, and we always like to look at the graphs from left to right, okay, left to right. So if you look from left to right, the slope is actually what? The slope is negative, right? And then what happens once it crosses the vertex, the slope changes from negative and to positive. So that is what we like to call as the nature of the graph changes. The vertex is the point where the nature of the graph changes. Okay, it was decreasing, our slope was negative, and once it passed the vertex, it started to increase. Okay, that is the vertex. The other idea for identifying the vertex is that it is the minimum or the lowest point when the graph opens up. Okay, so that point is the vertex, and the coordinates for the vertex are given by h and k. Okay, h and k are this is the x coordinate of the vertex, and k is the y coordinate of the vertex. Okay, now how do we calculate the h and k? Here I'm not actually deriving the whole formula for h and k. I'm just going to write it out and we're going to use it. Again, guys, if you want to know how we derive these formulas, let me know in the comments, and then I can go over those steps. I would love to go over those derivations, guys, but I want your feedback and comments. If you really want to see those, then I'm going to do it. Otherwise, I don't want to do it just because I want to do it. Okay. The second thing is the h, which is the x coordinate of the vertex, is given by the formula negative b over 2a. And it is not too difficult for me, or it should not be too difficult for anyone to remember this formula, because if you remember the quadratic formula, guys, that's a big formula. Okay, and a lot of things that we do in the quadratic functions basically just are branches of that quadratic formula. Like, remember the discriminant, it is the piece or the quantity inside the radical, b squared minus 4ac. Similarly, to find the x coordinate of the vertex, it is simply negative b over 2a, which is also part of the quadratic formula. Okay, then we have the x coordinate. To find the k, we just simply have to substitute that negative b over 2a, which is the value for h. We got to substitute that back for x, and we simplify the right hand side, and what we get is the k value. Okay, that is my vertex, and I have the h and k is defined like this. Then the other thing we wanted to talk about was the So obviously this is also in this case the minimum, and the minimum or the maximum, in the next one we'll talk about the maximum. The minimum is the value for what the k is, because when we think about the minimum or the maximum, you are thinking about the y values. So this is the lowest most point, that's why it is the minimum. And when we are actually trying to find the what is the minimum value, obviously we are talking about the y value here, okay? And the y value for this vertex is the k value. So once we calculate h, we can calculate k. Once we have the k, we basically have the minimum value for that particular function, okay? So we covered the coefficient a is greater than 0, means it opens up, how to calculate the vertex, what is a vertex, right? And then how to find the minimum. Once you have the coordinates for the vertex, then you can find the minimum or the maximum if the graph opens up. Sorry, opens down in the next case. And then the last thing we want to talk about in this case is the axis of symmetry. So axis of symmetry is simply a line that goes through the vertex and that divides the graph of a quadratic function into two symmetrical graphs, okay? So it's simply this dotted line that goes through the vertex. And what is special about this line? It's, okay, axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry. Guys, axis of symmetry is a special line that goes through the vertex and that just basically divides the graph into two symmetrical pieces. Okay, they are basically just mirror reflections of each other. That's what the axis of symmetry does. Okay, and how do we formally or mathematically write the axis of symmetry? So axis of symmetry is the line which looks like this. It's this vertical line, and the equation for that line is obviously going to be x equals to, but what? Well, it passes through the vertex, so it has to have x equals to h. That is the axis of symmetry. Guys, this is axis of symmetry. X equals to h is the equation for the axis of symmetry. The minimum value is the k value. Vertex, we got it here, and here we have how to calculate the coordinates of the vertex. Now, this is all going to make more sense when we use this for a specific equation, which I'm going to do obviously in my coming videos. But here I just formally wanted to define the vertex form, show you the graph of two different, I'm going to show you another one, two different graphs, and then from there we want to identify, we want to see what is the vertex, what is the max, what is the min, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let us quickly look at the other type. So for the other type, we are looking at a graph which opens down. Let's say looks something like this. Now in this case, this point right here is going to be my vertex, right? It is still the point, could be the maximum, the highest point, or the lowest point, depending on the nature of the graph. And at the same time, if you look again, you look at the graph from left to right. So from left to right, it's going like this and like then this. So it is increasing, 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 increasing till it reaches the vertex, till it reaches this point. And then what happens after it passes through this point? It starts to decrease. So the nature of the graph is changing from increasing to decreasing. Positive slope to negative slope. That is the vertex. So if the coordinates of the vertex are still h and k, okay, we want to be consistent with the standard, our vertex form. And then the axis of symmetry, if I have to draw one, is this vertical line that goes through the vertex and that divides the graph symmetrically into two equal pieces, okay? And we already know the equation for that. Guys, it is the same equation, x equals to h. Now, what else do we need to define here? Obviously, in this case, the vertex is going to be the maximum. And we know the maximum value is the corresponding y value for of that vertex, of that point, which is going to be k. And oh, the other thing we wanted to make sure we point out here was if a is less than 0, and this is the scenario where a is less than 0, what happens? The graph opens down. That is this one. And then the other piece is exactly the same. To find h, you got to do negative b over 2a. And to find k, you simply substitute that. Okay. Guys, these are the basics for the vertex form, where we have the vertex, the axis of symmetry, and we have whether the graph opens up or down, which we can already know by looking at or by identifying the value for that constant a, and then how to identify the max min and how to draw the axis of symmetry and write its equation. Okay, so guys, take some notes on this, go over these definitions carefully, and then in my later videos we're going to actually use these to find all these things, and we're probably going to look at many different types of examples as well. Okay guys, till then keep practicing, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.